Cool. Thank you so much for that introduction. I do have to do one correction. I don't work for Shopify anymore. That's okay, but I do want to reclaim some time for having to explain that. No, I am actually Vice President of Engineering at Salesforce, and I work primarily in the Commerce Cloud. And I get to have you all after lunch, which means that I need you all to wake up, or at least I need to wake you up. So let's just see how this all works out as we go through this. So one thing, when I first started out building software, I just wanted to build software that people anticipated, people wanted to actually spend time with and actually wanted to work on and people wanted to use. And then I wanted people to be like, oh man, that software does this really great stuff. I never expected software would be able to do that. And then if you're an engineer and you're first starting out, one of the most important things you wanted your software to do is actually just work. It's like, okay, if I put this out here, I just don't want as many bugs, and I want people to really enjoy it. And then last but not least, I wanted to also have whatever work I did create room for me to be able to innovate, right? But accomplishing that, when you first start out as a junior engineer, one of the things they don't teach you in school is all of the people you have to talk to in order to be able to write software. Like, you think you're going to graduate from school and you're just going to go in and you're going to start writing software. But accomplishing the actual act of writing good software requires you to know the general purpose of the business that you're working for. Like, what do they do? How do they make money? Why is it important? Right? The other thing is you have to align on the mission and vision of the company. I just can't build whatever I want to build. I have to build things that actually forward the company's mission and vision. And then last, I have to partner to build the right products and capabilities. So I have to talk to the president of commerce. I have to talk to the UX designers. I have to talk to the DevOps team. I'm not a one-man show when I walk into a company, right? But Alan Weiss had this very succinct definition of the purpose of a company. And he said, the purpose of a business is to offer value through products and or services to customers who pay for the value with cash or equivalent. I was like, oh man, that makes perfect sense, right? It's like very simple definition, it hits, right? Now, today, however, we're going to go beyond that. We're going to, because that's the beginning of your career as an engineering leader or even just as a software engineer. It's like understanding what the company you work for does and how that's actually going to, and how what you're going to do is going to further that mission and how help that company actually make money. So today, we're going to talk about engineering's universal commercial imperatives. We're going to take a quick look at some key performance metrics, and won't be all of them, and the business value that they provide. We're going to talk about the strategic balancing act you have to do as an engineering leader in order to actually be able to deliver value for the company. And we're going to talk about how do you lead for holistic growth and trust within the organization that you're in. So, however, I should probably introduce myself, right? Hello, I'm Rodney. I live in New York State in the United States of America. I've been married 25 years. I have 3 daughters. Happy belated Father's Day to all the fathers that are in here. I didn't know Father's Day was Sunday, so my daughter reminded me, and she was like, we're doing Father's Day on Wednesday when you come back. So that works out. I'm Vice President of Engineering in Salesforce Commerce Cloud, and these are some of the companies that I have worked for in my career. Basically, if you were to think of my career as a sandwich, I started out in platform and platform services and software as a service, and I'm currently on the backside of my career, having been at Shopify and now at Salesforce, back in software as a service, platform as a service as well. But in between, I actually work directly in industry, building platforms and technology in-house, right? So I want you to take a look at this picture, right? And I want you, this is not a Rorschach test or anything like that. It's not going to morph or anything. But I want you to think about the people that you see in this room. Who are they? What are their roles? Now, I'll tell you, they're all involved in building software, right? They're building product for a company. But what are their roles? What do they do? Who's the engineer? Who's the UX person? Who's the CFO? Who's the CTO? Right? And I don't have an answer for you. I'm not going to point out every single person there. I just want you to look at that and say, who do I think these people are? Now, the key thing is that if you don't know, that's actually a good thing, right? Because what we want when we're thinking about how we actually build companies and build software is we actually want the kind of blurring of the lines between the roles. That's how we're going to get the most value out of all the people that we have within our company, right? So with that, I want to just slide into engineering's universal commercial imperative. So, one, it used to be that or some of you all might still be experiencing this, but whenever someone thought about IT or software, they always said we were a cost center. We didn't make the company any money, and so as a result, people kind of loved to hate us and hated to love us, right? But the reality is, now, mind you, this is from the Phoenix Project. It's a novel about DevOps, but ultimately, in our companies, IT is no longer just a department. It's a core component of every department, a critical driver of every business process that we have. There is no longer a world where some part of your company isn't using technology. And so that means that we are central to every aspect of the business. Our work goes beyond just building features. And AI is blurring the lines between engineering and the company's actual commercial pursuits. One thing that I'm pretty certain of that we're going to start to see is AI is going to become the new shadow IT, right? So if you've ever worked in-house for an IT department, what you tend to find is that when users don't get what they want from IT, they will build it themselves in Excel spreadsheets, or if you're old enough, Microsoft Access or whatever. So there'll be these applications running all over the company that no one in tech knows anything about. People are going to do that with agents because ultimately people want to be effective at their work and do the things they need to do. So I believe AI is going to become the next shadow IT. We're going to see things on our networks that are making calls and we want to know where they're coming from or who built them. And then last, because of all of these changes, the non-functional requirements like speed, latency, throughput, all of these things are going to become critical business imperatives. So more than anything, you're going to have people who have never said the word latency in their entire life all of a sudden need to care about latency because tech is everywhere. We're no longer niche or a smaller part of the company, right? So if non-functional requirements are going to be everywhere, what are some of these things that people are going to have to pay attention to? Now, mind you, I have spent 24 of the last 25 years working in e-commerce. So I have been on call for every Black Friday, Cyber Monday for the last 24 out of the last 25 years. And so I spend my days thinking about these numbers, these metrics, and making sure that they're super important, right? But there's some things that we make the mistake of when we're measuring things. We want it to be perfect. We want to capture every single bit, byte measurement that comes. But the truth is, in the book, How to Measure Everything, I think he captures this well, which is measurement is not about perfect certainty. It's about reducing uncertainty. It's about being able to say, I know I have a general idea of what that thing over there is actually doing in this particular moment in time so that I can go and troubleshoot it, right? So, metrics that matter in my world, latency. Like, how long do people have to wait for the request to come back for the things that they want, right? And what happens if things are too slow? Customers get unhappy, conversion goes down, productivity goes down, because now what happens is your engineering team who could be building that next new capability is spending time trying to make things go faster. Next one is throughput. Capacity, like how much can I actually take on? And I'm going to talk about a case study a little bit later after this. Scalability. Okay, now, did I build it? Did I architect this software so that I could scale horizontally, scale vertically? What am I doing? Am I load shedding? Am I not load shedding? How am I doing waiting rooms so that people who come to a site who want to buy something can at least know that they're in the queue? What are the kind of things that I'm doing to ensure to handle the load that's coming? And then the last thing is availability and uptime, right? Lost revenue. If you're down, lost revenue, customer trust, and then your brand reputation suffers, right? So, case study number one. So I did work for Shopify. I don't work there right now. And I did lead storefront engineering. And one of the things that I was responsible for at Shopify is how every single request got rendered on the platform. So whenever you go to a Shopify site and you hit that site, if they are running hydrogen or oxygen, which is the React-based framework, or Shopify's core liquid platform, I was responsible for making sure that every single one of those requests actually got served, right? But then then the CEO of the company came and said the following. Well, I would just say this. A couple metrics that are important. So page load, if you took too long for things to wait, 3 seconds, people would leave, 53% abandonment. 0.1 second improvement in page load ends up with 8.4% improvement in conversion. And if your site is faster, 95% of the people who visit your site who feel like it's fast, they'll return, right? So it's a part of the business. But the CEO of Shopify comes and says, hey, Rodney, we need to make things faster, right? And the thing about Shopify is that anything you do for one merchant, you're doing for all 3 million. There is no one merchant thing. So he comes and says, how do we make the site rendering faster so that every merchant can get the benefit of performance on the Shopify platform without having to change the code on their site? So that was the absolute requirement. No downtime, and no one should have to change a single line of code on their site. Their site just gets faster. That was the request, right? So the solution, one, it's not done. I still talk to my friends who are there. They're like, Rodney, we're on phase 15, right? But we did a database redesign, no downtime. We pre-compiled the theme architecture on the platform, no downtime. We upgraded the virtual CPUs, no downtime. And we end up spinning up regional clusters because the reality is the speed of light is finite and you kind of can't make anything faster. So getting closer to people ends up being the right thing. And then ultimately we did a deep I/O review. Like, how long is the CPU waiting for database calls to come back when it could actually be freed up and do other work, right? So we looked at every part of the system. And so what we ended up doing is constant communication, working code, sharing and learning. There were no status meetings. And then the outcome is we reduced latency by 50%, right? Resulting in an increased number of page views and the number of people who added at least one item to their cart, right? So basically, and then every customer, every merchant got that for free. Their site just got faster. And they didn't have to do anything to get that, right? But the only way that could happen was for me to actually pay attention. What was Shopify's core business? What was its core goals? What was its mission and vision? What was it really trying to accomplish? But then there's the other part of being in technology and IT, which is we're always being asked to do more with less, right? It's a constant balancing act. They are like, hey, do this thing, but no, you can't have more budget, right? And so what we have to do.
If you're enjoying this, then Lead Dev's got loads more to offer and there's tons to explore.
So the reason I love Lead Dev so much is they've got such a range of content on so many different topics in the world of engineering, leadership, and management.
So Lead Dev helped a lot on building my own career, right? And it's great to also see how it's helping the new generation as well.
Make sure to sign up and join us at leaddev.com.
All right, so we're constantly being asked to balance speed, scale, and cost, right? Even with full corporate support, we must constantly balance speed of delivery, system scalability, cost efficiency, and maximizing value delivery, right? We're constantly juggling between these things. Like, if I make it faster, then this thing will happen. If I make it scalable, then this thing is going to happen. Like, we're constantly having to juggle between these things, right? But the thing is we're only able to be as successful as our system is. And so James Clear in Atomic Habits, he says, you do not rise to the level of your goals. So whatever goal you set, you don't actually rise to that level. You fall to the level of your systems, right? If I said right now I want to go run a marathon, my system would probably say, I'm not going to achieve that at this particular moment in time. One day, sure, but I have to actually change the system in order to be able to run that marathon successfully. And so some of us fool ourselves into believing we can go do a thing without actually changing anything, right? We just wake up in the morning like, I'm going to build this thing. But the reality is we have to actually change our systems if we're going to be successful. So case study number 2. So one of the companies I worked for was Steve Madden. And they came and they said, we heard a rumor. Amazon is going to start doing this thing called Prime Day. And Rodney, we don't currently sell on the Amazon marketplace. We need you to get us onto the Amazon marketplace because we have to be on the marketplace for X number of weeks before Amazon will allow us to participate in Prime Day. So the problem was 2 things happened. One, I just got my performance review, and one of the things said in my performance review is that I said yes too much. So I just said no in response to that, right? I'm like, well, like literally last week I said yes, but the other tension was they also had just acquired 3 new brands who they wanted to be live in the same period of time because they wanted to book some part of the capital expenditure and operational expenditure in Q2. So they're like, we need all 3 of these brands to be up and live, and guess what? We need to do this Amazon Prime thing. And I said no. And then they said, well, what would it take for you to be able to do this? I told them they did everything that I said we could to do. We launched all 3 brands, and we made it in time for Prime Day, right? But it is a constant balancing act. So I had to talk to the CEO, the chief operating officer, the chief information officer, and the president of commerce to get all of those resources, right? Strip the Amazon project down to the absolute minimum needed to launch and be approved by Amazon to participate in Prime Day. And the outcome was 10% increase in sales in the first 8 months with no cannibalization of existing channels, meaning that the customers who were buying from Steve Madden continued to buy from stevemadden.com, and it was a net new group of customers who found Steve Madden on Amazon. So it ended, but that only happens if I'm actually talking to the president of commerce. And the other thing that I knew is that when I worked at Gucci, one of the complaints I got was online is stealing our in-store customers. So we did a survey, because that's what you do when people started saying that. I like building things, and I felt threatened, so we did a survey. And what we found was 85% of the people who bought at Gucci.com lived within 10 miles of a store and had never been to a store, right? So it's like, conversation over, we're moving on to the next thing. Like, we're not doing this anymore. But again, that comes from understanding the business. What are the goals of the business? What are they trying to accomplish? And the way you do that is by talking to people who are not in tech, which leads us to, how do we lead for holistic commercial growth and trust, right? So 1, we all make this mistake, but the reality is leadership is not about titles, status, or power over people. Leaders, all of you all, and myself, are people who take responsibility for recognizing the potential in people and ideas, and who have the courage to develop that potential. Sometimes we shirk away from challenging someone on our team. Sometimes we shirk away from challenging ourselves. Sometimes we lie to ourselves and think that we're good managers, when in reality, we actually probably need to do something to become better managers. And so Brené Brown, in the book called Dare to Lead, not a tech book, it's not a book about Silicon Valley, but ultimately this really truly applies. So now the question becomes, if engineers are caring about commercial success, commercial outcomes, that means that we can't hold all of this stuff ourselves. We actually have to get the entire organization in on it with us, right? So that means that when I start talking about latency, when I start talking about throughput, when I start talking about scalability, when I start talking about uptime and availability, that becomes everybody's concern and not just the engineering team's concern. So the question is, how do I get everybody who's not in engineering to care about all of these things? I don't have all the answers, but these are some of the techniques that I use and strategies that I use to make this happen. 1, translate and visualize business impact. Hey, 3 seconds, greater than 3 seconds, people, 53% abandonment on mobile. That's what you say to the non-technical person. They go like, wait a minute, Rodney, you're telling me that if I'm at 3.3 seconds, I can just start seeing my conversion go down and dip? Like, yes. How much? This much. wait a minute, I think I don't need any new features. I need you to just make the site faster because I'm losing money, right? And it becomes their thing. And so all of a sudden you start getting emails and I had one president of commerce, he actually used the email as text messages. So his question would just be in the subject line with nothing in the body. And so he'd just send you an email with just the subject. And it would be like, hey, how fast is the site today? Right? Like those kinds of questions. So you got to translate and visualize business impact. Second, you want to own the goals and KPIs, key performance indicators, with the organization. It's not just yours. It's not just a tech concern. Third, you want to quantify the risk and rewards, right? You don't do this, this happens. If you do this happens. And then you have to measure it. You can't just say to people like, hey, if you do this, this is going to happen. Because sometimes we're going to be wrong, but we have to be able to have data that shows like, yeah, this did happen or it didn't happen, and it didn't happen because of these reasons. We also have to use data to tell stories. So stop saying, just trust me, I know what I'm doing. Actually bring the data to the table, because sometimes we interpret our own data incorrectly. And when we do that, it's good to let other people look at that and say, hey, I don't think that means what you think it means, right? And it just helps us be better. And then we have to involve the stakeholders in the trade-offs. We should stop making decisions for other people. So we do things like, well, if we do that, it's going to cost $15,000 extra a month, and I know finance is not going to like that, so we're not going to even mention it to them, and we're just not going to do it. The reality is that if you told finance that this $15,000 a month will result in $150,000 or $1.5 million, they go like, why are you standing here? Go make it happen. So we got to involve people in the trade-off. Let's not make decisions for the organization. Let's ask questions and see if we're right, okay? And then the other thing is break traditional boundaries. If you go back to the picture that we had at the very beginning of this conversation, we didn't know who all the people, and we knew those people were building product because I told you that they built product and they did come. We don't know their roles. And so sometimes we get offended when someone comes and says, hey, I read a story the other day and AI doesn't actually do that. And then we go, well, I'm the tech person. I know what AI does. You don't know anything, right? You're probably going to fail, right? Because the reality is my grandmother doesn't know tech save her life. She's never driven. She doesn't roll down her own windows, any of that stuff. She doesn't open her own doors, her own car doors, none of that. But if I sat her down and explained the problem I had, she'd relate it to something in her life that sounded very similar and be able to give me advice on how to get around it. Right? So sharing and making sure that people co-own, and then we break those boundaries. That also means that as tech people, when UX comes to us and says, we should do this, we should ask the question. We use software every day. We know what we like and don't like. And when product comes and says, we should do this, we should say, where's the data that says that that's going to be the most valuable thing for this engineering team to actually be doing? But we should also be open for them asking us the same questions. So, ultimately, in your organization, you want to optimize for flow, which is simply the smooth, continuous delivery of value to the customer. That's where you're trying to get to. I want to build software every day. I don't want to be in status meetings. I actually don't really care who has vacation next week, although I want them to take vacation because that's really good. I just don't want to have actually have 10 minutes of Sheila's going to be here, Bob's going to be there. I actually want to be in meetings where we talk about software, technology, and architecture, right? So I want to optimize for getting things built and getting them to customers, learning, feedback, and then circling back. But this quote comes from Matthew Skelton and Manuel Pais in Team Topology's book, right? So key takeaways. 1, translate tech to business value. Make every single line of code count. I tell my team, when you are writing software, pretend like no one's ever going to let you touch it again. Now, that sounds counterintuitive because most of you will be thinking like, well, Rodney, it'll never be done because they don't want to ever be in a situation where no one ever touches it again. But you have to assume that because priorities change, things change, but as you get better at your craft, these things you build better software, and not having to touch it for months at a time doesn't become that much of a problem. 2, champion non-functional requirements. They are business imperatives. I care about latency and scalability, but the company needs to care about it too. 3, master the balancing act. Optimize the speed, optimize the scale, and optimize the cost, but communicate what the trade-offs are. 4, lead within and beyond your own org chart. So 1, within your own teams, you should never say to your engineers, don't talk to customers. That's terrible. You should say, talk to customers. And if you know that one of your engineers is not quite the right person to be talking to people, because that's your prerogative, pair them up with a salesperson, pair them up with a non-technical person, and have them go and listen and talk to customers, or have sessions where your customers come to you and tell you what they like about your software and what they would like to be different. Right? And then the other thing is, within your org, talk to people, share them, invite them in, let them be a part of the journey of building software. And then 5, act with foresight. Innovate for competitive edge and enduring trust. And what that means is, the number of engineering leaders that I hear who still don't buy into AI is mind-boggling to me. Well, I'm just going to wait and see. I'm like, you have nails. Here's a hammer. Do you want to use your shoe? Right? Like, that's where we are. Like, if the only thing you use AI for is the hammer and nails, for which AI is the perfect tool, you're ahead of the game. But AI is going to be so much more than that, and it's not going away. Some of the companies who claim to be AI companies, they're going to go away. Thank you so much for this time. I really appreciate it.